Hey everyone, my name is Brandon, and today I'm going to share with you one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. Something that happened to me while working at a late-night radio station that completely changed my perspective on reality. Before we dive into this story, I can see that about 80% of viewers watching my videos haven't subscribed yet, so please hit that subscribe button right now. Give this video a like if you enjoy horror stories. And don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss any of my uploads. Also, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me which country you're watching from and what time it is there right now. And if you have any horror stories of your own, please share them in the comments below or email them to me. I read every single one. Now, let me tell you about the night that changed everything. It was 3 years ago. I was working as a late-night DJ at WXYZ-FM in Texas, one of those small-town radio stations that played old rock classics and took call-ins from lonely insomniacs, the kind of job that pays just enough to keep you alive, but slowly kills your soul in the process. My shift ran from midnight to 6 a.m., 6 hours of playing music, reading weather reports, and occasionally chatting with the handful of people still awake in our little corner of nowhere. Most nights were routine, predictable, boring even. But that night, October 13th, a Friday the 13th no less, that night was different. The day had started strangely. I remember waking up around noon with this overwhelming sense of dread, like something was watching me, waiting for me. The feeling followed me throughout the day, a cold presence that seemed to lurk just outside my peripheral vision. I tried to shake it off, told myself it was just pre-shift jitters. But when I arrived at the station that evening, feeling only intensified. The parking lot was darker than usual. One of the streetlights had burned out, casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt. As I walked toward the building, I could swear I heard footsteps behind me. But every time I turned around, nothing was there. Just empty space and the distant hum of traffic. I remember settling into the booth around 11:45 p.m. The previous DJ, an older guy named Marcus, was packing up his things. He looked tired, more tired than usual. His hands were shaking as he gathered his coffee cup and cigarettes. "Quiet night tonight," he said, but his voice was strained, nervous. "Only had about 5 callers all evening." "Oh, and Brandon?" "Yeah," I asked, adjusting my headphones, noticing how his eyes kept darting toward the phone. "There was this one caller, around 10:30. Strange voice. Kept asking about you specifically. Wanted to know when your shift started." I felt a small chill run down my spine. What did they want? Marcus shrugged, but I could see the worry in his eyes. "Wouldn't say. Just kept asking when you'd be on air." I told him midnight like always. "Probably just a fan or something. But Brandon." "What?" The voice, it didn't sound right. Like it was coming from somewhere far away, or like it was being filtered through something. "I've been doing this for 30 years, and I've never heard anything like it." He paused at the door, looking back at me with genuine concern. Maybe you should call in sick tonight. Get someone else to cover." "Why?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. "Just be careful, okay? If that caller phone's back, don't engage. Don't give them anything personal. And if things get weird, really weird, you call the police. Don't try to handle it yourself." With that ominous warning, he left me alone in the booth. The red on-air light flickered on as I started my opening monologue. "Good evening, night owls. This is Brandon coming to you live from WXYZ-FM. It's just past midnight here in Texas, and we're going to keep you company through the dark hours ahead. We've got some classic rock coming your way, starting with Led Zeppelin." I hit play on Stairway to Heaven and leaned back in my chair. The studio was small. Just a mixing board, 2 microphones, a computer, and walls lined with old vinyl records. A single window looked out into the parking lot where my beat-up Honda sat under the one working streetlight, casting eerie shadows that seemed to move and shift in ways that defied explanation. The first hour passed without incident. A few regular callers, some music requests, the usual late-night chatter. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The air in the studio felt thick, oppressive, like the moments before a thunderstorm. And then, about 20 minutes into the second hour, the phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID. It just showed a series of zeros. 000, 000, 0000. That was odd. Our system usually displayed at least something. Even block numbers showed up as private or unknown. I let it ring a few more times. Sometimes drunk callers would give up, but this one was persistent. The ringing seemed to echo through the small studio, each tone somehow more urgent than the last. Finally, I answered. WXYZ-FM, you're on the air. Silence. Just static and what sounded like breathing. Deep, labored breathing, like someone who had been running, or crying, or both. Hello, you're live on WXYZ. Can you hear me? Still nothing but that breathing. And then slowly, like words being dragged up from some deep, dark place, a voice. Low gravelly, like someone who had smoked too many cigarettes for too many years, or like someone whose throat had been damaged, permanently damaged. Brandon, the way it said my name. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. Recognition. But more than that, it was accusation, judgment, condemnation. Yeah, this is Brandon. What can I do for you tonight, caller? Another long pause. The breathing continued, and underneath it, I could swear I heard something else. A sound like water dripping, or liquid slowly pooling. I've been waiting for you. The words sent ice through my veins. Waiting for me? Do I know you? Not yet, but you will. Very soon. We have so much to discuss, so much to resolve. Look, if you want to chat, that's fine, but you need to tell me what you want to talk about. A sound that might have been laughter, cold and hollow. Oh, Brandon, you know exactly what we need to talk about. Don't pretend. Don't lie. Not to me. Not anymore. The line went dead. I stared at the phone for a long moment. Something about that voice. It felt familiar, but I couldn't place it. Like a half-remembered nightmare that haunts you for days after waking. I tried to shake it off. Strange calls were part of the job. Lonely people said weird things. I went back to my playlist and continued the show. But every shadow in the studio seemed darker now, every creak of the building more ominous. 20 minutes later, the phone rang again. Same caller ID. 000, 000, 0000. This time I hesitated, my finger hovering over the answer button. Something told me not to pick up, but we were live. Dead air was a cardinal sin in radio, and curiosity, that fatal human flaw, was eating at me. WXYZ-FM. Brandon, that same gravelly voice, but now it sounded closer, more intimate, like the speaker was whispering directly into my ear. Why did you hesitate? Were you afraid to talk to me? I wasn't afraid. I was just finishing something. Look, who is this? What do you want? What I want. The voice chuckled. That same sound like gravel in a cement mixer. I want justice. I want truth. I want you to remember what you've spent 3 years trying to forget. My blood ran cold. I don't know what you mean. Don't you? 3 years ago. October 13th. 3 years ago to the day. Brandon. A dark night. A lonely road. A young woman walking alone. I nearly dropped the phone. How could they know? You remember now, don't you? I can hear it in your voice. The fear. The guilt. It's been eating at you, hasn't it? Every night, every dream. Every quiet moment when the memories come crawling back. I did remember. 3 years ago. The accident. The night I tried so hard to forget. The night that changed everything. Who is this? I whispered, my voice barely audible. Someone who knows your secret. Someone who's been watching you. Waiting for the right moment, the right night, to make you pay. The line went dead again. My hand was shaking as I queued up the next song. Pink Floyd's Comfortably Numb. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was anything but comfortably numb. I was terrified, exposed, like a raw nerve in the darkness. I tried to focus on the music, on the routine, but my mind kept drifting back to that night 3 years ago. The night that haunted my dreams and poisoned my waking hours. I had been driving home from a party. It was late, around 2 a.m. I had been drinking. Not a lot, but enough that I should have called a cab, should have stayed the night, should have done anything but get behind the wheel of my car. The road was dark, winding, one of those backcountry highways that cut through miles of empty farmland. No streetlights, no houses, just darkness stretching endlessly in all directions. I was speeding, trying to get home before the alcohol in my system made driving even more dangerous. And then she appeared in my headlights. A young woman, maybe 20, walking alone on the side of the highway. She was wearing a white dress, or what looked white in the harsh glare of my headlights. She had long dark hair that seemed to flow behind her like water. She turned toward my car, her eyes wide with terror, or maybe recognition. Her mouth opened as if to scream, or to speak, and then I shook my head violently. I couldn't think about that now. Not while I was on the air. Not ever. But the memories kept coming, flooding back like water through a broken dam. The impact, the sound of glass breaking, the way my car lurched to the side, the smell of antifreeze, and something else, something metallic and warm. The silence that followed, so complete it seemed to swallow the world. And then her face, pressed against my windshield, eyes staring, but not seeing, blood trickling from the corner of her mouth, her lips moving soundlessly, as if she were trying to tell me something important, something I needed to hear. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. I was young and drunk and terrified. So I drove away, left her there on the side of the road, bleeding nylon. The phone was ringing again. 000, 000, 0000. I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. The sound seemed to echo through my skull, reverberating in the empty spaces where my conscience used to live. Finally, I answered. WXYZ. Her name was Delilah. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. The room started spinning, the walls closing in. Stop. Delilah Martinez, 22 years old. She was walking home from her job at the diner. Her car had broken down earlier that day. The transmission finally gave out after years of putting off repairs she couldn't afford. Please stop. She had a daughter, a little girl named Sophie, only 3 years old. Delilah was working double shifts, sometimes triple shifts, to save money for Sophie's birthday party. She wanted to rent a bounce house, the kind she never had as a child growing up poor. Tears were streaming down my face now. I didn't know. I didn't know about the daughter. Didn't you? Or did you just not want to know? Did you ever wonder about the life you destroyed? The family you tore apart? The little girl who waited all night for her mother to come home? It was an accident. I didn't mean to. But you didn't mean to leave her there. You meant to drive away and pretend it never happened. You meant to let her bleed out on the asphalt while you went home and wash the blood off your bumper, and the dent from her body, and the pieces of her dress that were caught in your grill. The accusation hit me like a physical blow, because it was true, every word of it. I had gone home, parked in my garage, and spent the next 3 hours cleaning every trace of the accident from my car. I even drove to a 24-hour car wash across town, paid cash, made sure no one would remember me. Who are you? I managed to ask through my tears. Someone who knows the truth. Someone who's been waiting 3 years for justice. Someone who loved her. Someone who misses her every single day. What do you want from me? I want you to suffer. I want you to feel what she felt in those final moments, alone, scared, betrayed by a world that was supposed to protect her. I want you to understand what it means to be abandoned, to be left to die. The line went dead. I sat there for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The current song was ending. I had to say something, had to keep the show going, but my voice felt like sandpaper, my throat tight with grief and fear. That was Pink Floyd. It's now 2:15 a.m., and you're listening to WXYZ FM. We'll be right back after these messages. I hit play on a commercial block and stumbled to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, looked at myself in the cracked mirror above the sink. I looked like hell, pale, sweaty, eyes red from crying, and shot through with blood vessels that looked like lightning strikes. But there was something else, something in my reflection that made me step back in horror. For just a moment, just a split second, I could swear I saw her. Delilah, standing behind me in the mirror, her white dress stained with blood, her dark hair matted and wet, her eyes reflecting an otherworldly light. I spun around, but the bathroom was empty. Just me and my guilt and the sound of my own ragged breathing. When I returned to the booth, there was something different. The air felt colder, thick with the smell of copper and decay. And there, on my desk, next to the photograph, it was a picture of Delilah, but not the Delilah from my nightmares. This was Delilah alive, vibrant, beautiful. She was sitting on a park bench, holding a little girl with curly dark hair and bright brown eyes. Both of them were laughing, the kind of deep, genuine laughter that speaks of pure joy and unconditional love. But as I stared at the photograph, something changed. The image seemed to shift and blur. The laughter faded, and Delilah's eyes, her bright, beautiful eyes, began to cloud over, to fill with blood. The little girl, Sophie, began to cry, tears of blood streaming down her innocent face. I dropped the photograph, but when it hit the desk, it had changed again. Now it showed Delilah as I remembered her from that night, broken, bleeding eye, her white dress torn and stained, her eyes staring accusingly at the camera at me. On the back, written in what looked like dried blood, were the words, "You killed my sister." But how? How was the photo here? The studio had been locked. I was the only one with the key. Marcus had left hours ago. The night janitor didn't come until 4 a.m. My hands trembling, I picked up the photograph again. This time, as I watched, the image began to move, like a short film loop, playing over and over. I could see Delilah walking along the highway, could see my headlights approaching, could see the moment of impact, the way her body flew through the air like a broken doll, the way she landed, twisted and still, on the cold asphalt. And then, impossibly, her eyes opened, looked directly at me through the photograph, and her lips moved, forming words I could somehow hear despite the silence. "Why did you leave me to die?" I screamed, threw the photograph across the room. It hit the wall and shattered, but instead of glass, instead of paper, what scattered across the floor looked like pieces of bone, fragments of skull, drops of congealed blood. The phone rang. I stared at it, letting it ring over and over. The sound seemed to change with each ring, becoming less like a telephone and more like screaming, the sound of someone in unimaginable pain. But eventually, inevitably, I had to answer. We were still on the air. People were listening, depending on me to maintain the illusion of normalcy. WXYZ. My voice was barely a whisper. "Do you like the picture, Brandon?" The voice was different this time. Younger, female, but with an edge of steel that cut right through me. "Who is this?" "My name is Maria. Maria Martinez. Delilah was my sister." "Oh God, Maria, I'm so sorry. I never meant for." "Sorry." The word dripped with venom. "You're sorry? Do you know what sorry means, Brandon? It means you feel remorse, regret. It means you wish things had been different. But you don't wish that, do you? You wish you'd never been caught. You wish the guilt would go away. But you don't actually wish Delilah was still alive." "That's not true. I think about her every day. I dream about her every night." Nightmares aren't the same as caring, Brandon. Fear isn't the same as love. You're not haunted by losing her. You're haunted by the possibility of being found out. "Please, what do you want from me?" "I want you to know what it felt like to be her, to lie there on that cold road, feeling your life drain away, waiting for help that never came, wondering why no one stopped, why no one cared. Someone else would have found her eventually. Eventually." Maria's laugh was like breaking glass. She lay there for 6 hours. Brandon, 6 hours of bleeding, of pain, of hope slowly dying. Do you know what she was thinking about? She was thinking about Sophie, about how her little girl would wake up and find Mommy wasn't home. She was thinking about the birthday party, the bounce house, the cake she'd promised to make. I was sobbing now, great heaving sobs that shook my entire body. I was scared. I was young and stupid and scared. And she was dying, bleeding out on the asphalt while you went home and cleaned your car, while you practiced your alibi, while you deleted the evidence from your phone. Oh yes, Brandon, I know about the phone. I know you took pictures. My blood turned to ice. What pictures? Don't lie to me. After you hit her, after she was lying there, you got out of your car. You walked over to where she lay, and you took pictures with your phone, evidence of what you'd done, insurance, in case you needed leverage later. The memory came flooding back, a memory I'd buried so deep I'd almost convinced myself it never happened. But it had, after the impact, after the initial shock. I had gotten out of the car. I had walked over to where Delilah lay broken and dying, and I had taken pictures, 3 of them, close-up shots of her face, of her injuries, of the blood pooling beneath her head. Not for insurance, not for leverage, but because some sick part of me, some twisted corner of my soul, wanted to remember, wanted to possess that moment of ultimate power, the moment when I held another person's life in my hands and chose to let it slip away. You kept them, didn't you? Maria's voice was like acid. All these years, you kept those pictures. You look at them sometimes, late at night, when the guilt gets too heavy. You look at them and you remember what it felt like to be God, to choose who lives and who dies. No, I deleted them. Liar. They're on your phone right now, aren't they? In a hidden folder, password protected. Your little secret, your trophy. She was right. The pictures were still there, on my phone, in a folder I'd labeled insurance documents. I told myself I kept them as evidence, proof of my guilt, penance for my crime. But the truth was darker, more twisted. I kept them because they made me feel powerful, important, significant. What kind of monster are you, Brandon? What kind of person takes pictures of a dying woman? What kind of human being turns suffering into entertainment? I couldn't answer, because there was no answer. Nothing I could say would justify what I'd done. Nothing could explain the darkness that lived inside me, the corruption that had turned a moment of panic into an act of pure evil. She called me that night, about an hour before you killed her. She was so excited about Sophie's birthday party. She had finally saved enough money to rent the bounce house. She was walking home because her car had broken down, but she was happy. Brandon, despite everything, despite being broke and tired and alone, she was happy because she was going to make her daughter's dreams come true. Each word was like a knife twisting in my chest. Please. She talked about the cake she was going to bake. Sophie's favorite, chocolate with vanilla frosting and rainbow sprinkles. She was going to stay up all night decorating it, making it perfect. She talked about the games they would play, the songs they would sing, the way Sophie's face would light up when she saw the bounty house. Stop. And while she was walking home, planning that party, loving that little girl, you were speeding down that dark road drunk and careless, about to destroy everything, about to turn a mother's love into a child's nightmare. I was hyperventilating now, gasping for air, the studio spinning around me like a carnival ride gone wrong. Do you know what happened to Sophie after you killed her mother? I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. She waited. Brandon. She sat by the window in her little nightgown, clutching her favorite stuffed animal, a pink elephant named Rosie. She waited all night for Delilah to come home. When the sun came up and Mommy still wasn't there, she started crying. Not the normal crying of a 3-year-old, but the deep, soul-crushing crying of a child who knows, somehow knows, that everything has changed forever. Please stop. The neighbors found her the next morning, still sitting by that window, still waiting. They called the police, child services. But what do you tell a 3-year-old? How do you explain that Mommy isn't coming home, that she's never coming home, that some drunk coward killed her and left her to die like roadkill? I want to make it right. I want to help Sophie. Help her? You want to help her? Do you know where she is now? Brandon. No, she's in foster care. Her 3rd placement in 3 years. Do you know why she can't stay in one home? Because she has nightmares every night. She wakes up screaming for her mother. She refuses to sleep unless someone sits with her. She won't eat chocolate cake, won't look at bounty houses, won't celebrate her birthday. Because all of those things remind her of the party that never happened, the promises that were broken, the love that was stolen from her. I was on my knees now, vomiting into the trash can, my body rejecting the poison of truth, the bile of guilt. She draws pictures. Brandon, want to know what she draws? No, she draws her mother, over and over, always the same picture. Delilah lying on a dark road, covered in blood. And in every picture, there's a car driving away. A car with a man inside. A man who looks like you. That's impossible. She never saw me. Didn't she? Are you sure about that? Brandon, are you absolutely certain that when you got out of your car, when you walked over to take your pictures, that she wasn't there? That she wasn't hiding behind a tree or in the tall grass, watching you document her mother's death? The possibility hit me like a sledgehammer. Could Sophie have been there? Could she have witnessed everything? The accident, the pictures, my cowardly flight? You're lying. Am I? Then why does she know your name? Brandon. Why does she wake up screaming it? Why does she tell her foster parents about the bad man named Brandon who hurt her mommy? I felt my sanity slipping, sliding away like water through my fingers. That's impossible. Is it? Or have you just convinced yourself it's impossible because the alternative, the truth, is too horrible to accept? The line went dead, but this time the silence was different, heavier, more final, like the silence of a grave, or the space between heartbeats when the heart stops forever. I managed to drag myself back to the microphone. The commercial block was ending. I had to say something, but when I opened my mouth, no sound came out. My voice was gone, stolen by grief and horror and the crushing weight of truth. Finally, in a whisper barely audible over the radio waves, I managed to speak. This is Brandon at WXYZ FM, and I need to tell you something. Something I should have said 3 years ago. I took a shuddering breath, looked at the red on-air light, at the phone that held so many secrets, at the shattered remains of the photograph scattered across the floor like broken dreams. 3 years ago tonight, I was driving home from party. I had been drinking, and I hit someone, a young woman named Delilah Martinez. The words came pouring out, not the sanitized version I'd rehearsed in my head, but the whole truth. The drinking, the speeding, the impact, photographs, the cleanup, the lies, everything. When I finished, the studio was silent except for the hum of the equipment and the sound of my own ragged breathing. But then, softly, almost imperceptibly, I heard something that made my blood freeze. Crying. The sound of a child crying, faint but unmistakable, coming from somewhere in the walls, or the ceiling, or perhaps from some place between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. Sophie, I whispered into the microphone. Sophie, if you're there, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The crying stopped, replaced by a sound even more terrifying. Laughter. A child's laughter, but wrong somehow, distorted, like an old recording played at the wrong speed. And then, impossibly, a small voice came through the radio speakers, clear and innocent and heartbreaking. Why did you hurt my mommy? I looked around the studio frantically, but I was alone, completely alone. The voice was coming from the equipment itself, from the radio waves, from the space between reality and nightmare. I didn't mean to hurt her. I said to the empty air, to the ghost of an innocent child whose life I'd destroyed, it was an accident. But you took pictures. Yes, and you left her there. Yes, and you never said you were sorry. I'm saying it now. I'm sorry. Sophie, I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't bring Mommy back. The voice was fading now, becoming more distant, more ethereal. I know it doesn't, but I want to make it right. I want to help you. I want to. But the voice was gone, replaced by static, by the white noise of empty airwaves and broken promises. I sat there for a long time, staring at the microphone, waiting for something, anything. But the only sounds were the mechanical hums and electronic whispers of the radio equipment. Finally, I reached for the phone, dialed a number I'd memorized, but never called. 911, what's your emergency? My name is Brandon Mitchell. I'm at WXYZ radio station on Highway 49. I need to report a crime. A hit and run from 3 years ago. I'm the one who did it. The operator's voice was calm, professional. Sir, can you repeat that? 3 years ago, October 13th, I killed a woman named Delilah Martinez. I hit her with my car and left her to die. I'm ready to confess. Sir, I need you to stay on the line. We're sending officers to your location. Do not leave the building. I'm not going anywhere. I've been running for 3 years. I'm tired of running. I hung up and returned to the microphone. There were still 3 hours left in my shift. 3 hours to tell the whole story, to name my shame, to honor the memory of a woman whose name I should have spoken years ago. This is Brandon at WXYZ-FM, and I have a story to tell you. A story about guilt and secrets and the price of cowardice. A story about a young mother named Delilah Martinez who died alone on a dark road because I was too selfish and scared to do the right thing. For the next 3 hours, until the police arrived, until they led me away in handcuffs, I told Delilah's story. Not my story, not the tale of my guilt and redemption, but her story, her dreams, her hopes, her love for her daughter, the future that was stolen from both of them. I played her favorite songs, read her poetry I found online, shared memories from her friends and co-workers who called in after hearing my confession. For 3 hours, Delilah lived again on the airwaves, her voice carried on the radio waves to anyone who would listen. And in those final moments, as the police entered the studio, as they read me my rights, as they prepared to take me away to face justice, I heard it one more time. Sophie's voice, clear and pure and somehow peaceful. Thank you for remembering my mommy. The trial was swift. I pleaded guilty to vehicular homicide and leaving the scene of an accident. Got 5 years, served 4 with good behavior. But the real sentence, the one I'm still serving, is the knowledge of what I took from the world, the light I extinguished, the love I destroyed. But here's the thing, the strange thing that still haunts me to this day. When the police investigated Maria Martinez, they couldn't find her. Delilah had been an only child, raised by a grandmother who died when Delilah was 18. No siblings, no family at all except for Sophie, who was being raised by foster parents who had never heard the name Maria. The phone record showed no calls to the station at night except for the regular programming line. The photographs, the ones of Delilah, had disappeared from the studio by morning. Security cameras showed only me alone, talking to empty air. The other DJs, the janitor, everyone who worked at WXYZ, they all swore the studio was locked that night. No one could have gotten it except me. And yet, somehow someone had. Some people said I imagined the whole thing. That guilt had finally driven me to a breakdown. That I created Maria and Sophie in my mind as a way to force myself to confess. Maybe they're right. Maybe it was just my conscience finally demanding justice. But I know what I heard. I know what I saw. And I know that Delilah Martinez, beautiful, loving, tragically lost Delilah, found a way to reach across the veil between life and death to make sure the truth came out. I've been out of prison for 6 months now. I work construction these days. Nothing glamorous, but honest work. And every paycheck, every single one, I send half to a trust fund I set up for Sophie. She's 9 years old now. Beautiful like her mother, still in foster care, but with a good family this time. People who understand her trauma, who help her heal. And she doesn't know who I am. I've made sure of that. The money comes through lawyers, through intermediaries, through carefully constructed legal barriers that protect her from ever having to face the man who destroyed her childhood. But someday, when she's older, when she's ready, if she wants to know what happened to her mother, the truth will be waiting for her. Not the sanitized version, not the comfortable lie, but the whole truth. Every terrible detail, every moment of cowardice, every second of that night when I chose my own comfort over another human being's life. Sometimes, late at night, when I'm lying in bed, I think I can hear her. Delilah whispering, not accusing, not condemning, just talking, telling me about Sophie's progress, about her drawings, about the way she smiles now, sometimes, when she forgets to be sad. And sometimes, just sometimes, I think I can hear Maria too, the sister who never existed, except in the space between guilt and redemption, between justice and mercy, the voice that spoke for the voiceless, that demanded truth for the truthless, that carried love across the impossible distance between life and death. The radio station closed down about a year after my arrest, not because of the scandal, though that didn't help, but because small-town radio was dying, killed by streaming services and satellite radio and the endless digital noise of modern life. The building sits empty now, windows boarded up, parking lot cracked and overgrown with weeds that push up through the asphalt like green fingers reaching toward the light. But people in town say, if you drive by late at night, sometimes you can still hear music coming from inside. Old rock classics. LED. Hashtag the late night radio station. Story continuation. Zeppelin and the Doors. The same songs Delilah used to request when she called other stations. Back when she was alive. Back when she had dreams and hopes and a future stretched out before her like an open road. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you what happened after my release from prison. Because the story, the real story, didn't end with my confession. It didn't end with justice. It didn't even end with my 4 years behind bars. It continued, in ways I never expected, in ways that still make me question the nature of reality itself. I was living in a small apartment across town, trying to rebuild some semblance of a normal life, when it started happening again. The phone calls, the whispers in the dark, the feeling of being watched by eyes that shouldn't exist. It began about 3 months after my release. I was working a construction job, honest work like I said, building houses for families, trying to create something instead of destroying it. I come home exhausted every night, shower off the dust and sweat, eat a simple dinner, and try to sleep without dreaming. But sleep, real sleep, had become a stranger to me. Instead, I lay awake listening to the sounds of the night, cars passing on distant highways, dogs barking at shadows, the whisper of wind through trees that sounded too much like voices, too much like accusations. And then, one night in January, about 2 a.m., my phone rang. Not my cell phone. I didn't have one of those anymore. Too many memories attached to smartphones. Too many pictures I'd rather forget. No, this was the old landline that came with the apartment, a number I'd never given to anyone, a number that shouldn't have been known by anyone outside of the phone company. I stared at the phone for 6 rings, 7, 8. Finally, more out of curiosity than courage, I answered. Hello. Silence. Just static and the sound of distant wind, like someone calling from a place far away. A place where the weather was always cold and the sky was always dark. Hello? Who is this? And then, faint as a whisper, clear as a bell, I heard her voice. Brandon. It was Delilah. I knew it was her, even though I'd only heard her speak once, that night on the highway, when she turned toward my headlights, when she opened her mouth to scream, or to ask for help, or to forgive me. I'll never know which. Delilah. I whispered into the phone, my voice shaking like leaves in a storm. Is it really you? You remember my voice. I remember everything, every detail, every second, every choice I made that night. Good, you should remember, forgetting is a luxury reserved for the innocent. The line was crackling with interference, like the signal was traveling across vast distances, or through barriers that shouldn't exist between the living and the dead. What do you want from me? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. I want you to know that justice isn't the same as peace, that confession isn't the same as forgiveness, that serving your time doesn't erase the damage you've done. I know that. I've never expected forgiveness, from you or anyone else. Haven't you? Then why do you send money to Sophie? Why do you watch her from afar? Why do you tell yourself that your guilt, your pain, somehow balances the scales? The accusation hit me like cold water, because she was right. Part of me, the part one tried to ignore, did think that my suffering somehow mattered, that my remorse was a form of payment, a way to earn some small measure of absolution. I don't know. I admitted. I don't know why I do anything anymore. You do it because you're still thinking about yourself, about your guilt, your pain, your need for redemption. You haven't learned to think about us, about Sophie, about the life you stole. Then teach me. Tell me how to make it right. You can't make it right. Brandon, some things can't be fixed, can't be undone, can't be forgiven. They can only be carried, like stones in your heart, until the weight of them teaches you what love really means. The phone went quiet, not dead, but quiet, like someone taking a deep breath before saying something important, something that would change everything. Sophie is in trouble. My blood turned to ice. What kind of trouble? Her current foster family, the Johnsons, they're good people, but they're struggling, financially, emotionally. They want to keep her, but they're being pressured to give her up, to send her to a group home. No, she needs stability. She needs love. She needs her mother, but failing that, she needs someone who understands what was taken from her, someone who knows the true cost of that night. What are you saying? I'm saying, Brandon, that maybe, just maybe, your purpose isn't to suffer. It's to protect, to use your pain, your guilt, your knowledge of loss, to make sure Sophie gets the life she deserves. How? I can't adopt her. I'm an ex-convict. I'm the man who killed her mother. Even if the system would allow it, which they wouldn't, it would destroy her to know the truth. Who said anything about adoption? Who said anything about her knowing who you are? There are other ways to help, other ways to intervene, other ways to love someone without claiming credit for that love. Over the following weeks, I began to understand what Delilah meant. Through careful research, through discreet inquiries, I learned about the Johnson family situation. They were both teachers, good people who genuinely loved Sophie, but they were drowning in debt, student loans, medical bills from MRES, Johnson's cancer treatment the previous year, a mortgage they could barely afford, and they were being pressured by the state. Budget cuts meant fewer resources for foster families, fewer support services, more pressure to move children into cheaper group facilities. So I started helping anonymously, through lawyers and shell companies and carefully constructed legal barriers. I paid off their mortgage, their medical debts, their student loans. I set up a monthly stipend to cover Sophie's expenses, therapy, clothing, education, extracurricular activities. And slowly, month by month, the pressure eased. The Johnsons could breathe again, could focus on being parents instead of just surviving. Sophie's life became more stable, more normal, more filled with the kind of simple joys that every child deserves. But the phone calls continued. Not every night, but often enough to remind me that death, real death, doesn't end relationships. It just changes them, complicates them, makes them impossible to understand or explain. Sometimes it was Delilah telling me about Sophie's progress, her drawings, her nightmares that were slowly becoming less frequent, her smile that was slowly becoming more genuine. Sometimes it was Maria, the sister who never existed but somehow knew everything, questioning my motives, challenging my assumptions, making sure I never forgot that good deeds don't erase bad ones, that helping Sophie didn't bring Delilah back. And sometimes, rarely, but sometimes, it was Sophie herself, not the adult Sophie, but the 3-year-old Sophie from that terrible night, the child who had waited by the window, the child who had watched her world collapse. Those calls were the hardest, because she didn't understand, couldn't understand, why her mommy had gone away, why the nice man in the car had driven off, why nobody had stopped to help. I was hiding in the tall grass. She told me once, her voice small and frightened and heartbreakingly innocent. Mommy told me to hide when I heard the car coming. She said sometimes drivers don't see little girls in the dark. You saw everything. I asked, though I dreaded the answer. I saw the bright lights. I saw Mommy fall down. I saw you get out of the car. I saw you take pictures. I saw you drive away. Why didn't you tell anyone? Why didn't you come out? Mommy always told me to stay hidden until she came to get me. I waited and waited, but she never came. When the sun came up, I walked home by myself, but when I tried to tell people about the man with the camera, they said I was having nightmares. They said little girls shouldn't make up stories. The revelation shattered something inside me. Sophie had been there, had witnessed everything, had tried to tell the truth, but had been dismissed as a traumatized child with an overactive imagination. I believe you. I whispered into the phone. I believe every word. Do you? Then why did you take pictures? Why did you want to remember Mommy being hurt? How do you explain evil to a child? How do you describe the darkness that lives inside some people, the twisted impulse that turns tragedy into trophy, suffering into entertainment? I was sick. I said finally, in my mind, in my heart. I was sick and I did something horrible, something that can never be forgiven or forgotten. Are you still sick? The question hung in the air like smoke, like the ghost of burnt bridges, like the echo of choices that can never be unmade. I don't know. I answered honestly. I think about your mommy every day, I try to do good things. I try to help you have a better life. But I don't know if that makes me better or just more guilty. Mommy says guilt is just love with nowhere to go. The wisdom of it, coming from the mouth of a dead child, or the ghost of a child's innocence, struck me like lightning. Your mommy was very smart. She was the smartest. She knew all the words to all the songs. She could make pancakes that looked like butterflies. She never got mad when I spilled juice on the carpet. And then, as always, the line went quiet. The connection faded. The voices retreated back into whatever realm they inhabited, leaving me alone with my thoughts and my guilt and the growing realization that redemption, if it existed at all, wasn't something you earned. It was something you lived day by day, choice by choice, act of service by act of service. The years passed. Sophie grew, thrived under the Johnsons' care, excelled in school, made friends, learned to laugh again without feeling guilty about being happy. The nightmares faded, the drawings changed. Instead of accidents and blood and dark roads, she drew families and houses and bright futures. She never knew where the money came from, never knew about the anonymous benefactor who paid for her education, her therapy, her summer camps, her college fund. The Johnsons thought it was a wealthy relative of Delilah's, some distant cousin who wanted to remain anonymous. Only I knew the truth. Only I carried the weight of irony, that the money funding Sophie's bright future came from the man who had stolen her past. But the calls, the late-night conversations with the dead, they began to change, evolve, become something different. Delilah's voice grew softer, less accusatory, more, what's the word, maternal. She spoke about forgiveness, not the kind that erases guilt, but the kind that transforms it, that turns poison into medicine, that alchemizes suffering into wisdom. You can't undo what you did. She told me one night, but you can choose what to do with the rest of your life. You can choose to let the guilt destroy you, or you can choose to let it teach you how to love. I don't know how to love. I confessed. I'm broken, damaged. I'm the kind of person who takes pictures of dying women. You were that person, but you don't have to stay that person. Love isn't something you feel, Brandon, it's something you do. It's a choice you make again and again, especially when you don't feel worthy of making it. But how do I know if I'm doing it right? How do I know if I'm helping Sophie or just feeding my own need for absolution? You don't know, that's the point. Real love, sacrificial love, means helping someone without knowing if it matters, without needing credit, without expecting gratitude. It means doing the right thing even when the right thing doesn't make you feel better. The wisdom of the dead, if that's what they were, began to reshape my understanding of everything. Guilt, responsibility, redemption, justice, love itself. I realized that I had been treating Sophie like a project, a way to balance some cosmic ledger, a method of earning my way out of hell. But real love, the kind Delilah was talking about, meant caring about Sophie's well-being for its own sake, not as a reflection of my moral progress. So I stopped keeping score. Stopped measuring my good deeds against my past crimes, stopped waiting for some moment of revelation when the universe would declare me forgiven. Instead, I just lived, worked, helped when I could, suffered when I had to, and slowly, very slowly, learned what it meant to love someone else more than I loved my own guilt. The phone calls became less frequent, but more precious, like visits from old friends or guidance from teachers who understood lessons I was still learning. Maria, the sister who existed only in the space between justice and mercy, began to speak about Sophie's future, her dreams, her plans to become a teacher like the Johnsons, her desire to help other children who had experienced trauma. She wants to be a counselor. Maria told me one evening, she wants to work with kids in foster care, kids who have lost their parents, kids who feel lost and alone and scared. She'll be good at it. I said and meant it. She understands pain, but she also understands healing. She does, and part of that understanding, part of her ability to help others, comes from the work you've done, the stability you've provided, the healing you've made possible. I didn't heal her. The Johnsons healed her, her therapists, her teachers, her own strength. They were the instruments, but you provided the resources, the foundation, the safety net that allowed the healing to happen. That matters. Brandon, even if you never get credit for it, even if she never knows it matters. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if the voices are real, or if they're just my mind's way of processing guilt, of finding meaning in meaninglessness, of creating purpose from catastrophe. But then I think about Sophie, now 15 years old, honor roll student, volunteer at the local animal shelter, planning to study psychology in college, and I know that whatever the source of those voices, whatever their nature, they led me to do something right, not to earn forgiveness, because some acts can't be forgiven, not to balance the scales, because some weights can't be lifted, but to transform destruction into creation, to turn taking into giving, to convert the energy of guilt into the power of love. Sophie graduates from high school next month. She's been accepted to 3 universities, full scholarships to all of them. She wants to study child psychology, to specialize in trauma counseling, to dedicate her life to helping kids who have survived what she survived. And she has no idea that her mother's killer is the one who made it all possible. That knowledge, that secret, will die with me. Because real love, sacrificial love, doesn't need recognition, doesn't require gratitude, doesn't demand credit. It just gives and gives and gives until the giving becomes its own reward, until the love becomes its own purpose, until the act of loving transforms the lover into someone worthy of the love they're giving. The phone hasn't rung in 3 months now, the longest silence since the calls began, and I think I understand why. My teachers, whether they were ghosts or guilt or grace, have finished their lesson. They taught me that redemption isn't about being forgiven. It's about learning to forgive yourself, others, the universe itself, for being the kind of place where beautiful young mothers can die alone on dark roads while their killers drive away into the night. They taught me that justice isn't about punishment. It's about restoration, about using whatever power you have, whatever resources, whatever time, to heal what can be healed, to mend what can be mended, to love what can be loved. Most importantly, they taught me that love isn't a feeling. It's a decision, a daily choice to put someone else's well-being above your own, to sacrifice your comfort for their healing, to give without counting the cost. And maybe, just maybe, that's what Delilah was trying to tell me that first night at the radio station, when her voice came through the darkness, when her sister's voice, real or imagined, demanded justice. Maybe justice isn't about punishment at all. Maybe it's about love. The kind of love that reaches across the impossible distance between life and death, between guilt and grace, between the person you were and the person you choose to become. The kind of love that transforms killers into healers, destroyers into builders, takers into givers. The kind of love that turns a moment of darkness into a lifetime of light. I still work construction, still send money to support Sophie's dreams, still wake up some nights thinking about that October evening when everything changed. But now, instead of nightmares, I have something else. Hope. Hope that Sophie will graduate, will become the counselor she dreams of being, will help other children heal from trauma. Hope that somewhere, in whatever realm the dead inhabit, Delilah is proud of the woman her daughter is becoming. Hope that love, real love, sacrificial love, is stronger than death, more persistent than guilt, more transformative than justice. Hope that even the darkest nights, even the most terrible mistakes, even the most irredeemable acts, can be transformed into something beautiful, something healing, something that honors the memory of those we've lost by dedicating our lives to protecting those who remain. That's my story. That's what happened to me at that late-night radio station, and in all the years that followed. It's a story about guilt and grace, about justice and mercy, about the thin line between the living and the dead, and the even thinner line between destruction and redemption. It's a story about learning to love, not because you deserve to, but because the world needs you to, because there are children like Sophie who need anonymous angels, who need invisible guardians, who need someone to believe in their future even when their past has been stolen. Most of all, it's a story about hope, the hope that no life is irredeemable, that no act is unforgivable, that no night is so dark that dawn cannot follow, the hope that love, in the end, is always stronger than death. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for staying with me through the darkness, through the guilt, through the long journey from destruction to redemption. I hope it means something to you. I hope it reminds you that every choice matters, every life matters, every moment of love matters, even when, especially when no one is watching, no one is keeping score, no one will ever know. Because love, real love, doesn't need witnesses. It just needs willing hearts. And broken people, people like me, people who have done terrible things. We can still choose love. We can still choose to give. We can still choose to spend the rest of our lives trying to heal the wounds we've created. That's the real message of the voices, whether they were ghosts or guilt or grace. That's the real lesson of that terrifying night at the radio station. Love is stronger than death, stronger than guilt, stronger than the darkness that lives inside us all. And if someone like me, someone who took pictures of a dying woman, someone who drove away and left a mother bleeding on the asphalt, if someone like me can learn to love, then anyone can. Everyone can. Everyone should. Because the world needs more love, more healing, more hope, and less people like the person I used to be. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing that redemption is possible, even for the worst among us. If you enjoyed this story, if it moved you, if it changed something inside you, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. I have more stories to share, more lessons learned in the darkness, more hope discovered in the most unlikely places. Tell me in the comments which country you're watching from, what time it is there, and what stories you'd like to hear next. Horror stories, redemption stories, ghost stories, love stories. I have them all because life, real life, contains all of these elements, all of these genres, all of these possibilities. And if you have stories of your own, stories of guilt and grace, of mistakes and redemption, of love found in the darkest places, please share them in the comments or email them to me. Because we all need to know that we're not alone in the darkness, that others have walked these difficult paths, that healing is possible, that love is stronger than whatever mistakes we've made. What topic would you like me to cover next? What stories do you want to hear? What lessons do you need to learn? Tell me in the comments, because this channel, these videos, they're not just entertainment, they're community, they're connection. They're proof that even in the darkness, even in our guilt, even in our deepest shame, we are not alone. Love finds a way. Hope finds a way. Redemption finds a way. And stories, true stories, honest stories, stories that don't shy away from the darkness, but also don't give up on the light. These stories can change lives, can heal hearts, can transform killers into healers. That's what happened to me. And it can happen to you too. Until next time, remember, love is stronger than death, hope is stronger than despair, and redemption is always possible, even for people like me, especially for people like me. But before I end this story, let me tell you about something that happened just last week, something that proves the voices, the calls, the supernatural encounters, they were more real than I ever imagined. I was at the grocery store, buying my usual supplies, bread, milk, the simple necessities of a simple life, when I heard laughter. Children's laughter, bright and innocent and familiar. I turned around, and there she was. Sophie. Not the 3-year-old from my nightmares, not the voice on the phantom phone calls, but the real Sophie, 15 years old, beautiful like her mother, standing with Ms. Johnson, picking out ingredients for what looked like a birthday cake. She was taller than I had expected, with Delilah's dark hair but longer, flowing down her back like a waterfall. She had her mother's eyes too. Warm brown eyes that sparkled with intelligence and kindness, eyes that held no trace of the trauma that had once consumed her childhood. She was laughing at something Ms. Johnson had said, a genuine joyful laugh that made my heart soar and break at the same time. This was the sound her mother had died trying to protect. The future Delilah had walked that dark highway to secure the life that had been preserved through supernatural intervention and anonymous sacrifice. For a moment, just a moment, I considered approaching them, introducing myself as a family friend, someone who had known Delilah. But then I remembered the photographs, the cowardice, the evil I had carried in my heart that night, and I realized that some gifts are meant to be given from a distance, some love is meant to remain anonymous, some redemption is meant to stay hidden. So I watched from afar, pretending to study the cereal boxes, while really studying the miracle that Sophie had become. The way she moved with confidence instead of fear, the way she spoke with enthusiasm about her college plans, the way she helped Ms. Johnson reached items on high shelves with the natural kindness of someone who had been loved well and taught to love others. And then, as they were leaving, Sophie stopped, turned around, looked directly at me across the crowded store, and smiled. Not a smile of recognition. She didn't know who I was, but a smile of gratitude, as if somehow on some